Alright, let's do it, guys. Finally, you're getting a positive character review. Hi, I'm Kitty Monk, and I'm here to talk to you about Disenchantment. Or more specifically, one of the most underrated characters, Bunty.
Still adorably dim, I see.
Dim as the day is long, Your Majesty.
Honestly, I'm surprised Bunty got so many votes. You guys must really love her. I thought it was gonna be Oddball, since he's the one character you have a lot of strong opinions about. Don't worry, I'll get to each of these characters eventually. And let me reiterate once again, don't let me get the impression that I hate Disenchantment as a show. I said it in my last review, but I love to watch this show. It's one of those shows I think you can enjoy despite it being really flawed. It's just that again, it has a lot of flaws. Still, this show has a lot of good things going for it. Bunty is one of those good things. Let me begin by saying she's awesome, and she's really underrated.
Let's hurry. The prince will be here any minute to marry you, and time permitting, meet you.
She isn't my favorite character, that's Una, but Bunty would probably come a close second, if it weren't for Stan. Bunty and Stan are married, so I'll get to Stan in a little bit. I always start by getting a brief summary of the character, so let's discuss that. Bunty's a servant in the castle. She's Bean's lady in waiting. And for lack of a better word, she basically raised Bean after Dagmar got turned to stone. This isn't me analyzing in depth, Bean even says it.
You allowed that amphibian to raise my precious Tia Beanie.
No. I was mostly raised by Bunty.
Before I continue the video, I have to bring up one thing. Bunty shares a voice actress with Becky, aka the Enchantress. They're both voiced by Lucy Montgomery.
It may take months, even years.
So we'll need chairs.
Dark chairs.
I can't hear it now, and I didn't know until after I watched the show, so good luck. And speaking of, I agree with a lot of people. I love Bunty's voice. I know it's probably meant to be annoying, but it's so charming and sweet.
Sobriety, Mum.
As a caregiver, Bunty conforms to a lot of stereotypes. She sees no problem with marriages.
Lots of reasons to get married, Mum. I got married for a goat.
She sees no problem with putting a woman on display.
See? It pushes all the mincemeat to the top of the pie.
Even then, Bunty is still amazing. Sort of. We'll get to her home life in a bit. Disenchantment is a world of greedy, selfish jerks, but Bunty's probably the purest out of all of them. I dare say that Bunty's probably the show's cinnamon roll, somebody to protect at all costs. But she has one major flaw the show really needs to build on: suppressed anger.
You're so kind, but you have a hidden rage inside you that no one else can see.
It's why I can't keep a dog alive.
Some episodes imply Bunty isn't just angry, she knows full well her life sucks, and her whimsy view might honestly be a coping mechanism.
This is Princess Tia Beanie. She's going to be staying with us until she realises how good she has it.
I really want an episode or a scene where Bunty finally loses it and she starts to rage, where she calls Bean and Co out for how they treat her. You might be wondering for what reason Bunty would have to be constantly angry. Well, even if Bunty's a servant, she has a life outside of the castle. She's married to Stan the Executioner. He's another character I really wish the show touched on more. If he weren't an executioner, I'd call him a cinnamon roll. Despite his job, he's so polite and chummy you kind of forget he gets paid to torture, maim, and kill people, guilty or innocent. He even frees Bean and Co when they're supposed to be executed. Why? Because he knows it would hurt Bunty. And when Bean goes to work for him, he turns out to be a pretty supportive boss.
You can do it, Bean. Just use the force. Centrifugal force.
The only time I ever really disliked Stan was when Bean couldn't execute Gwen and he insulted her. Stan is normally pretty sweet, so it felt a little out of character for me.
You're also a loser. Make way for the loser. Coming through. Here she is.
I know the point was to make Bean feel worse for not giving into peer pressure, but I don't think Stan should have been the one shaming her. Zog and the townspeople were more than enough.
Every time that girl gets a little responsibility, somebody winds up alive.
But enough about Stan. Despite their jobs, Bunty and Stan have a really rough home life. They have dozens of kids, enough to form an army. So many to the point where Bunty has a child over breakfast, and she acts like it's the same as brushing her teeth. Zog's their boss, and as you might expect, he does not pay well.
This isn't a window. This is our trash hole. We're far too poor for windows.
So they have no choice but to make their kids work.
If you can cry, you can work.
You know, it's a commentary on how, until super recently, most kids weren't allowed to be kids, or they didn't let past a certain age, but it's still kind of tragic. Also, question, all those street urchins we see in the background, are those Bunty's kids? Did they just run away? Is Bunty hands off as a parent? Or is it like that orphan kid from Les Mis? I only bring it up because Bunty mentioned some of her kids didn't make it past the cradle.
Oh, How my Charlie sparkled this morning when they heaved him into the burial pit.
Not even kidding, when Bean goes away to Steamland, Bunty ends up having more kids, including Bunty Jr. I heard the theory Bunty had so many kids is part of some deal with hell. It's why she's able to make so many kids so quickly. Besides, according to the flashback, she was Dagmar's handmaid, so she might know more than she lets on. Sadly, I wouldn't be surprised if that whole gag of her being a broodmare just stayed as a gag. Anyhow, it worked because Bunty's a servant to a bunch of rich jerks. She's treated more like a slave than a friend. More often than not, she gets the short end of the stick. When Dagmar, aka her old boss, started petrifying people, Bunty was one of the first victims. She wasn't the first, that was Pendergast, but still, it sucks. You probably think this sounds amazing, and Bunty's an amazing character. Well, I agree with you, but there is one major problem with her. She doesn't do anything major most of the time, or do anything to further the plot, and she rarely appears nowadays. The only episode I think she really contributes to something is when Bean moves in with her and Stan, and also when Stan released Bean from prison. Only good part is it makes my job a little easier. To analyze Bunty, I just have to watch specific moments, not full-on episodes. To be fair, Stan also gets this, even if he appears more often. I only bring this up because side characters are one reason why I love Disenchantment. But the problem is, the show is kinda like an anime, where it's mostly focused on the main characters, except for 1 or 2 moments when we get something with the side characters. And only when it's plot convenient or convenient for a joke. And then once we're done with those characters, we rarely see or hear from them again. It's sad. Bunty, Stan, the Heralder, Bip and Bap, Pops, Old Man Touchy, Chaz, Merkimer, they're all amazing side characters, but the show rarely uses them, or they're just plot devices. I brought it up in my Archdruidess review, and a few of you said it, but the whole review with the Archdruidess would have been better if we had more time with her since season 1. It would have given us more time for foreshadowing. I think a reason for this is the sitcom influence shining through. In most sitcoms, you expect side characters to only appear once or to appear sparingly. My favorite Futurama character is definitely the Robot Devil. His appearances are usually my favorite. I mean, a Devilbot who sings show tunes, trades his hands, and make quips, that's hilarious. But because Futurama is a sitcom and because of his role in the story, I don't really expect him to appear that often. Also, he and Homer share a voice actor, and that dude is a very busy man. Disenchantment is meant to have a story, so you're a little more disappointed when Bunty just ends up being a joke, and doesn't really do anything major. Especially since Bunty's technically in Bean's life on a daily basis. You expect her to have more of an impact on the Robot Devil. Her and Stan had a big chance to be clearer foils to Zog and Dagmar. Zog and Dagmar might love Bean, but they do treat her as a pawn a lot of the time. In the pilot, Bean was nothing more than her dad's meal ticket. And to Dagmar, that was her prophecy ticket. It's heartwarming that even if it's just their job, Stan and Bunty really treat Bean like their daughter, even if they can't give that same love to their children. And there were plenty of opportunities to add Bunty to the story outside of one episode. One user commented on my last video, and she brought up a great idea. In my last video, I said that as a joke, it should have been Bunty who was the mole, not the Archdruidess. But she said it really could have worked and it could have had more of an impact. Why is Bunty so dissonant to Bean's lack of wanting to marry? It only encourages Bean to leave Dreamland. Tess mentioned Bunty had a darkness inside of her. Her repressed anger could be more like passive-aggressive insults.
Don't worry, Mum. When the revolution comes, we'll rise up and kill you all.
Why is Bunty never on screen? She's off contacting Steamland. The Archdruidess makes the point that as a princess, lots of people have access to Bean's room, and as her handmaid, Bunty would 100% have access. That twist would have more of an impact. As been established by now, Bunty's basically a maternal figure to Bean. Another maternal figure betraying her? That would suck. But unlike Dagmar, who just loves Bean for her potential, Bunty would love Bean for Bean. Don't worry, season 4 will come out soon enough. Stan and Bunty might become bigger players, and that is time we desperately need.